And he kept Googling, like, whether a body was discovered in Wisconsin. I mean, who Googles body discovered in Wisconsin when no news is broken about it repeatedly after you kill your mom and dad? I think he wanted to get caught.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of LA Legal, where we'll be discussing Chandler Halderson. Joining me today is Neama and Dina Ineji. So, Neama, my first question is to you. And this is something that I found interesting while I was listening to some of the trial testimony and so on. So I want to know your thoughts on the absence of really any kind of an alternate theory in this case, right? Because the defense, a lot of times, what we see is they'll say, maybe it was an intruder that came in. Maybe it was this person, that person. We didn't see that here. So do you think that's what really helped prosecution drive this point across? Or do you think it was just a slam dunk case regardless?
So I cover this trial daily live, and one of the most horrific murders. And, you know, we're lawyers. We're in the business of misery. So, I mean, we cover these types of cases all the time. But for someone to kill his mom and dad, shoot them, try to burn their bodies, dismember them, spread them into 2 locations, it's just really unfathomable. So I sort of thought to myself, what is the defense going to do here? And they gave a very short opening statement, talked about reasonable doubt, presumption of innocence, very generic. And then what I expected them to do was to blame Mitchell, the brother, someone who had access to the parents, someone that had a financial motive because of the life insurance. But really, there was no real defense, in my opinion, put on in this case. And I thought to myself, why did this case even go to trial? Either we had a crazy defendant who was ultimately convicted of murder, or I think more likely is the state didn't put any deal on the table in this case. It was such a heinous crime by such a sick individual that if I were the prosecutor in this case, I would say no deals, no discounts, do not pass go, you're going straight to jail. And the defense really had no incentive but to push the case forward.
Right. And so when you listen to the opening statements really back to back, the prosecution did a phenomenal job. And I told you about this. He was fantastic. And so you put on the defense attorney, and look, she had a very difficult job, right? I mean, the facts are there. All roads lead to this guy committing this heinous act. And now she has to defend him somehow. What I thought was interesting, because the jury is full of just normal people. More often than not, it's not going to be a bunch of attorneys, right? So the people listening to this, I think, were just lost, because all she kept talking about for like 10 minutes was reasonable doubt this and that, and they've seen really no evidence yet. They don't really know what that really means. And so I think she lost them in the very beginning. Would you agree?
I do agree, and I'm interested in our trial lawyer extraordinaire, Dean, over here, how you would handle a case. Look, sometimes you get what we call a turd sandwich. You know, it lands on your table as an attorney. Dean, we hopefully don't give you too many of those. You've gotten 1 or 2, during your career at West Coast. But what do? You're an attorney. You're given this file. Your job is to defend this person, and obviously, you don't do criminal defense, but you've tried some difficult cases. What do you do in a case like this?
I've tried a couple turd sandwiches. I know you and I disagree sometimes on how much turd was in the sandwich. But this case reminded me of why I couldn't do criminal law. I felt so bad for the defense attorney. I mean, she had no case. I couldn't do that because I'm going to be privately, hoping my client gets convicted. But, when you have a bad case, you always want to try to build credibility with the jury. And I think she tried to do that to some extent. I think she admitted some of the crimes may have happened, but she tried to focus on motive. But, you play the hand that you're dealt. And if you're not dealt any hand, you have nothing to play. So I don't know what you do in a case like that other than try to build some credibility with the jury to say, make some admissions, but not so much that you're basically telling the jury that your client committed the murder. But reading everything about this case reminded me why I can't do a criminal turd sandwich. I'd much rather do a civil turd sandwich. I can stomach that a lot better. It goes down better a little bit.
So another question I have for you, Neama, because obviously former federal prosecutor, this is really sort of your area of expertise. One thing that she told the prospective jurors during jury selection was, how would you feel if I don't get up and say anything, right? And so my understanding is that she did very little, if any, like cross-examination and so on. So do you think that's all it's just a tactic because there really was no case for her? And so she was trying to vet out the jurors who might think, well, why is she not saying anything? You know, we'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you're hoping for one or two jurors that really can't get past the reasonable doubt, because really it was like a very canned, generic defense here. Presumption of innocence obviously applies in every case, doesn't matter if it's a murder or a bar fight, and the prosecution's burden to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's all she talked about. Well, there was plenty of evidence in the case. And if you're a juror, you're sitting, well, who else could have done this? You have Chandler Halderson, who by all accounts was a liar, right? He's lying about going to school. He's lying about having a job. He's lying to law enforcement. He's lying to the media. He came up with some story how his parents went camping and they were picked up by some
cabin,
they were picked up by some unknown neighbors, and that's the last he heard from them. Well, there's GPS and cell phone evidence that puts him at the scene of one of the bodies, and it turns out that that scene was somewhere that his girlfriend's family was connected to. So that's really bad when you're a liar and you're at the scene of the murder. And by the way, he asked his girlfriend to buy, I think, peroxide or some other type of cleaning material to clean up the crime scene.
Also, that last text message that came from his mom saying, "Hey, we got here safely. We'll be home on Monday." They were able to ping to the inside of their home. So he had his mom's cell phone, right? He sends a text to himself, which, by the way, he has a history of doing, right? He's sending emails to himself back and forth, showing his dad that he's speaking to the HR director of the insurance company he works at. Same with his guidance counselor at school. So this is kind of, really on brand with him to be sending these text messages. So they're able to pin him. He's the only one who lives in that house, not the brother. When the family is gone. So I think that was probably like a huge piece of evidence.
And he kept Googling like whether a body was discovered in Wisconsin. I mean, he felt guilty. He knew he was guilty. I think part of him wanted to get caught. I mean, who Googles body discovered in Wisconsin when no news is broken about it repeatedly after you kill your mom and dad? I think he wanted to get caught and he wanted to be put away. I don't know why else would he be Googling that every day?
Maybe to see
if body discovered, I think dismembered, or I mean, he knew.
You think so too? You think he wanted to get
caught? I don't know if he wanted to get caught. I mean, it's tough to get in the mind of such a sick and twisted individual who would do something like this. Even when he was talking, I mean, the guy had no affect whatsoever. I mean, again, I was watching him talk to law enforcement and just kind of these denials, and the guy's like a sociopath. I mean, serial killer vibes.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the other cases that we've discussed in episode 1 and 2 that really kind of made me think about in this trial. One of them was the Menendez brothers, right?
Yes.
They also, I don't think they dismembered their parents, but they shot their parents in the back, killed them, and then it turned out that the motive was life insurance. So let's talk about that.
Yes.
Crazy, but there's some kind of a motive. Versus here, it's really, the motive is to cover up a stupid lie about school. I mean, do you think there's some kind of like a missing link? Do you think there's something that we just don't know? To me, it seems crazy to do that to both your parents because you've been lying about a job. It doesn't make sense. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the Menendez brothers, that's a case that, we sort of grew up and you heard about, someone that, or two brothers that would kill their parents. And, at least there was a defense in the case. Not a good one, but the defense was that they were being abused. I don't know how abusive it is to tell your kid, hey, you got to go to school or you got to have a job. You can't just be a deadbeat.
Yeah, and you're mooching off our money. That's really what it was. The parents were like, you're working, but you keep taking money from us. What's up, right? And that's kind of what led him into this rabbit hole of lies.
Yeah, it was you and I were talking about it before the podcast today, and I was, initially I was like, there's got to be something more. I mean, how do you kill your parents over being caught lying about going to school and getting a job? But, the prosecution painted it so well in terms of lie, get caught on a lie. As soon as he got caught on a lie, shoots the dad in the back, invites the mom over, that it's like...
Continue lying.
Yeah, it's hard to fathom that somebody would kill somebody over that, but... The evidence is there. It seems like that was clearly the motive, that he just couldn't face the facts.
It's always good to kind of be live on TV when you get the jury verdict. And I was doing commentary. The prosecution defense, they do the closing statements. And really just a couple of hours, I think the jurors just wanted to get lunch, free lunch. And then they came back guilty, like on all counts. I mean, it was not surprising. It was quick. And he's the type of person that is going to die in state prison. So deservedly so.
Another case that this kind of made me think of, and going back a little bit to having a good defense, was the Casey Anthony, right? Because that was also this weird sort of, she's accused of killing her child. She spins out of control. She's partying. She's this and that. We've talked about it in length. But her defense was just so good, right? They brought in the possibility of it being her dad, the mom, like all these people, and really honed in on the fact that there is reasonable doubt about her, right? And so again, I just wanted to mention that and tie that in, because here we just didn't see any of that.
Yeah, I think if you're defending a criminal case, you need something. Sometimes I didn't mean to do it, right? It was an accident. You get that defense a lot. Or it wasn't me. Whether it's Casey Anthony, whether it's OJ, the jurors need something. They need some alternate theory. And I think that's what the defense didn't have here. Maybe there was nothing they could possibly come up with. But whether it's, LAPD framing your guy or Casey Anthony, the grandfather, they need someone who potentially may have done this. And I don't think we had that here. No one really.
And also, I think that the reason they probably, other than not having evidence against the brother, but the brother and the parents had a really, really good relationship. The brother was hospitalized shortly before the deaths happened, and he was diagnosed with he had some diabetes complications. So the mom was really doting on him. And so what I think is interesting, and it kind of plays to the psyche, is that Chandler made up an illness himself. He told people that he has hematoma and he needs I think that the statement was he needs his brain or his skull drilled and he can't walk. So it was almost like a me too, take care of me kind of thing, So I'm wondering if there was some kind of a crazy fallout between him and his parents, or some kind of I don't know, maybe neglect or something. I don't think so, but maybe.
Well, I can say as a civil plaintiff's attorney that brain injuries are never fabricated at all, ever. So I just want to go on record saying that. He said he had a concussion. He said he was injured in some type of accident. So it's actually impossible for anyone to fake an injury or to malinger.
I agree.
Okay, what are your thoughts?
maybe being second favorite or not being the favorite son played a role in it. I hadn't thought about that, but it's a very bizarre crime to try to tie this guy's motive into what he did.
Exactly, and how he did it. So let's talk a little bit about premeditation. So I want to hear your thoughts, because some of the things he did beforehand, right? So he texts his girlfriend even before he commits the crime and says, let's go to the cabin. And then this whole injury thing, right? Where I can't lift heavy things. I can't really walk. To me, that was planting the seed that he can't lift bodies and move them. But then there's surveillance footage of him in gas stations carrying giant bags of ice, because then he needs to go and freeze the bodies. So what do you think? Do you think this was premeditated, or do you think he was like, I don't know what to do. Oh my God, I'm caught. Let me just kill my parents.
No, absolutely premeditated in terms of his actions before, in terms of getting the firearm from an acquaintance who actually wisely took pictures of the transaction to make sure that if anything happens, the firearm would have been traced back to him. So you got to give that guy credit. But everything he did, basically set up a trap. It's just crazy, to try to tell his mom to kind of go stop by the convenience store to get soda, to kind of buy time for him to set the crime. There's no question that this was premeditated, both before, and we talked about what he did with the bodies afterwards, so. You agree?
Yeah, it seems pretty premeditated. I think he knew he was going to get caught sooner or later, and then kind of started thinking about what he was going to do about it.
Yeah, his plan, he definitely had a plan, in my opinion. I don't think it was a very good plan, obviously, but, he cut off his parents' heads and threw them in the fireplace 4th of July weekend. It's really hot, and then you have your fireplace going, right? And so all the neighbors were like, that's very bizarre. So that just tells me that he's thought about it, but he just really didn't think about the optics. I don't know, did he think that he can just throw bodies in the fire and they're just going to disappear and that's it. He's wiped all evidence. It's chaotic. Really.
Should have Googled that more.
Yeah, he really should have.
Yeah, and really kind of the prosecution, the only sort of decision they made or had to make was, do you show all this evidence to the jury? And they chose to really go down that shock and awe, gruesome path. And it was very powerful. You'd hear law enforcement witnesses talking about the smell of burnt flesh and human bodies, and they said it smelled like pork. It was just incredibly powerful. And really short of Mitchell's testimony, who was the brother who was just the victim in this case. He lost both of his parents. His brother is most likely, almost certainly, going to be convicted of this murder. Hearing him testify, just really incredibly sad stuff in this case.
I'm sad that I practiced his name so many times and I didn't have to say it yet.
You can say it. Please say it.
Halderson.
It was like a 10-minute period where, you were practicing. What's his first name?
Chandler. Very guilty sounding name.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree, but for me, Chandler just makes me think of Chandler Bing.
Yeah,
and
of course,
very different personas. So tell us what your thoughts are on his sentencing.
Oh, there's no question. This is a life type case. This is someone, no possibility of parole. This is not someone that accepted any responsibility for really this sick and twisted murder. I can't imagine the judge giving him any type of break, nor should he. Chandler Bing, Halderson, you are going to die in prison.
Is there a death penalty in Wisconsin?
I don't think so. I don't think it's definitely not a death penalty case. So
it's between life and life with possibility of parole.
Yeah. So death penalty is not an option. It's not, state didn't seek the death penalty. Obviously, we don't practice in Wisconsin. I'm not certain if it's a death penalty case, but I don't believe so.
As I said, I can't remember who it was about in my last episode. I said, may he rot in peace in prison. So any final thoughts before we wrap up this episode?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay. How about you, Neama?
No, thanks for having me as always. Love being on your podcast.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining and stay tuned for episode 4.